For years after the conclusion of The Handmaid's Tale, the first episode of the Testaments opens in Gilead. For those who don't know, a totalitarian government ruled both Gilead and the majority of the United States. Gilead retains a firm hold on its populace, particularly the women, in spite of a committed opposition effort. We hook up with June's daughter, Agnes, in the present. June is still working to get her kid back at this point, but considering that she is in the center of Gilead, it is easier said than done. Because women are not allowed to have calendars, Agnes is unsure of the year. You could actually lose a finger just by staring at one. Agnes is a plum at the moment because she hasn't gotten her period. Agnes, the strong Commander Mackenzie's daughter, points out that her father is protecting them from the Mayday terrorists as she leaves for school. Agnes still loves her stepmother, Paula. She uses her dolls as a way to vent her rage and fantasies about putting Paula in the attic. Aunt Vidala showcases a group of muscular men during a field trip, who are masked with white bags marked by a red X, revealing a dark reality where they abduct one of the girls for their own desires. This unsettling scenario underscores Agnes's awareness of the dangers women face, prompting her to stay vigilant. Upon arriving at Aunt Lydia's school, Agnes learns the significance of clothing colors among girls: pink for little ones, plum for teenagers, and green for those who have come of age, ready for marriage to high commanders. White is designated for newcomers from outside Gilead, while the Pearl Girls, gathered from various places by Aunt Lydia and her missionaries, are viewed with distrust as they attempt to assimilate. Despite the contempt shown towards them, Agnes finds some solace in her friendship with Becca, her first companion from Colorado, who is about to transition to green herself, indicating her own journey within this oppressive environment. Agnes is quickly summoned to Aunt Lydia's office. Lydia assigns Agnes to take care of Daisy, a new Pearl, and acknowledges that she has been observing her for some time. We know this is due to her relationship with June. Agnes is to be her shepherdess and teach her the ropes because she might become a plum. In order to avoid giving the girl too much information, Agnes makes sure to keep her cards near her chest. They manage a tight ship throughout the school, with Aunt Vidala in charge of everyone. Daisy clings to the standard soundbites about God as the girls try to talk to her during lunch. Ultimately, while Agnes and the others converse, Huldah takes her away to obtain ice cream, one of God's marvels. Shunammite is startled that Lydia has given Agnes this duty, especially since Becca is leaving for her wedding and dress fitting. Shu advises Agnes to turn on Daisy and fabricate a lie to punish and distance herself from her once Becca departs for her dress fitting. They eventually show up at school the following day for a difficult task, which Agnes detests doing. A man who is discovered touching himself on school property is brought in by Aunt Estee. As the ladies observe, they all point and criticize him, demanding that he be held accountable for his deeds. Daisy is horrified to see the man's limb severed with a handsaw. The only person who can't watch this is Daisy. Agnes follows her as she vomits in the corridor. Daisy is surprised and curses, totally breaking convention. Agnes keeps the secret from the aunts and even advises her to keep it that way. Aunt Lydia wanders up to the dorms that evening when the girls are asleep, blessing them. Daisy picks up a radio and listens to Mayday broadcasts after she leaves. She even switches the frequency to listen to music. In a flashback, we learn that Daisy is in Canada, and June quickly becomes interested in her. When we return to the present, Agnes discovers that her period has just begun. Agnes reflects on her menstruation as a marker of her identity as one of the chosen ones in Episode 2 of the Testaments. She feels a mix of shock, joy, and intense fear regarding her new status, particularly in the absence of her friends Martha and Rosa. Agnes shares her coming-of-age experience with Paula, who offers gentler guidance and notes her own differing induction experience. Paula also mentions giving Agnes a pad cover previously owned by Tabitha, whom Agnes regards as her biological mother. The momentary warmth dissipates when Rosa arrives to assume duties, in stark contrast to her nurturing past with Tabitha, as she recalls comforting her during her final days. During a commemoration at school, Agnes chooses to isolate herself in the bell tower to celebrate her day, while a classmate turns water red with paint, creating a visually striking moment. As Aunt Vidala presents Agnes with a new pin, the students gather outside, indicating a slight improvement in Agnes's situation. This shift is disrupted when she is called to corrections, now implemented in the aunt's wing for punishments. Daisy is the one being punished for swearing, and Agnes is forced to torment her while muzzled. Although the other girls relish the aggression, Daisy confronts Agnes about her presence during the incident. Both girls are subjected to the humiliation of using soap to cleanse their mouths, while the rest of their peers are excused. Daisy apologizes, yet Agnes remains unforgiving, suggesting that if it is too burdensome for Daisy, she should return home, to which Daisy responds that she has no home. Later, a doctor evaluates Agnes after school. While she is in the dental chair, he inappropriately touches her, an act cloaked in the guise of normality, but profoundly disturbing. Around this time, Agnes begins to dream about her spouse in a dimly lit room. Agnes is awakened that evening by Aunt Lydia, who informs her that it's time. All of this is a part of her ritual, in which she is practically baptized in a big pool. Later, Becca goes up to Agnes and tells her that she doesn't want a husband or to get married. Although she isn't angry with Agnes, it's clear from her wistful looks and small actions that she might have affections for Agnes. When they get married, Agnes tries her best to tell her companion that they would both be free of the aunt's influence. Daisy, on the other hand, ends up secretly sketching out the school's layout. She hides in the restrooms that evening to avoid being discovered by others, but it is now obvious that she is a member of the resistance. Agnes is sent back home in the meantime, but en route, she strikes up a conversation with Garth, one of the guards outside the commander's residence. They clearly have chemistry, but it will never work in Gilead. When Agnes is taken before Commander Mackenzie indoors, she falls to her knees and tells how she has changed into a woman. In episode 3 of the Testaments, the narrative shifts to provide deeper insight into Daisy's true intentions, enhancing her story's connection to the Handmaid's Tale. While Agnes's perspective remains vital for understanding the contrasting worlds Daisy navigates, it is Daisy's storyline that enriches the series as it progresses through the first season. This episode takes the Plums on an external field trip, illustrating the dangers of the outside world, and utilizes flashbacks extensively to detail Daisy's journey from Toronto to Gilead, the longest runtime of the season. Furthermore, Daisy is appointed as the narrator, giving the narrative a unique voice and delving into her inner thoughts, which challenge her outward display of piety around Agnes and the other girls. Daisy tells how Gilead developed gradually through her narration. Before they became public policy, horrible statements made by government officials were written off as exaggeration. It's hardly a novel concept, and that gives it credibility. Door-to-door Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses were mocked just as much as the white garb Pearl girls selling honey in Toronto. Daisy had no idea that Gilead as a whole was evil enough to kill her parents. She is more foolish. Neil and Melanie, Daisy's parents, had a boutique selling vintage clothes. They were unrelated to anything. Daisy is taken to identify their bodies after their abrupt and numbing murder, and a social services official comforts her. Until June Osborne shows up and informs her that she is in danger, she doesn't think that anything evil might be happening. Mayday was working with her parents. Gilead killed them. At first, Daisy doesn't buy it. She tries to feel normal again by sneaking out in the middle of the night to see her lover, Justin, who gave her the radio we saw her using in the premiere. However, it is not feasible. When she runs away from Justin and his advice to inform his parents and the police about what Daisy has been told, June is waiting for her. June assures her that she understands how she's feeling, which is the ultimate understatement. However, she also informs her that she is a Gilead child whose parents removed her when she was a newborn. She was adopted by Neil and Melanie. Gilead now desires her return. Even though these flashbacks don't all occur simultaneously, it's still worthwhile to describe them in that manner because they contribute to the current drama. On yet another field trip, the Plums are going to the opulent home of a former pupil who is now married to a commander. Daisy is compelled to accompany Agnes, even though Agnes and the others still clearly distrust her. This is when her suddenly audible inner monologue truly helps. In the Testament's episode 3, as we can hear, she mentally slags Agnes when she warns Daisy not to show signs of longing for her guardian, Garth. The irony: Daisy's role in the narrative is redefined as a result. We now know that she doesn't agree with what the aunt's are saying, and that she is naturally critical of Agnes and her companion's naivete. There are several ways in which she is a double agent. More on this soon. Despite their disparate experiences, Daisy is able to genuinely connect with the Plums because she intervenes to protect Agnes from gunfire when Mayday agents attack their school bus. Compared to, say, Aunt Vidala, who, despite her authority, merely lies on the ground in prayer, she is obviously bolder. Additionally, Daisy becomes a source of the normalcy that these girls have been denied. One of the guardians that was shot had a hairy stomach, which horrifies Hulda. When Daisy says that this is very usual, they presume that she only knows this because of some widespread promiscuity rather than, as she clarifies, fairly typical beach excursions back in Toronto. Daisy's outside-looking-in viewpoint enables us to perceive the Plums as victims of the very system they're compelled to uphold, although they have previously been portrayed as psychos. Commander Judd, one of the season's big bads, is introduced during the field trip at the previous Plums home. To reassure the girls that Gilead is correct and to gently question Daisy about her reasons for becoming a Pearl Girl, he even physically appears to be performatively devoted to his new wife, Penny. To do God's will, of course. However, she is lying. The conclusion of Daisy makes it clear that she is working with Garth and that the bus attack was premeditated. However, it was intended to be a retrieval mission. Who is going to be taken? Daisy is reassured by Garth that none of the girls were supposed to be hurt, but he doesn't appear to be entirely certain. In any case, Daisy gives him the map she made, which will be helpful for whatever comes next. However, Garth says he doesn't know who June is when Daisy requests to talk to her. Daisy is in a situation that instantly makes all of the Testaments more interesting because she is now caught in the middle and playing both sides. We'll have to wait and see. Hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more deep dives like this. See you in the next review.